Namaste. Welcome to the lesson about Hinduism. Namaste means I salute you, which is a traditional Hindu greeting. And before I dive into Hinduism itself, I want to call your attention to what you see on the timeline here. We have the different symbols of the religious faiths, and I'm going to remind everyone I'm going to be covering Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. I'm not going to be talking about Taoism or Sikhism. You might notice also on here Hinduism in 2500 BCE. What does BCE mean? Well, we're talking about Hinduism here, and if we were to go with the commonly used AD or BC timeline, what do those mean? Well, BC means before Christ. AD means after death. No, it doesn't. It means Anno Domini. Please don't say it means after death, because that's just wrong. Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord in Latin. Anno, like annual, Domini. So when we're talking about other religious faiths, or when we talk about the world in general, speaking of globalization previously, do we talk about things when in Rome do as the Romans do? Well, in other places they're not Christian majority, or there's maybe no Christians perhaps. So are we really going to have a timeline that says before Christ for people who don't either know who Christ was, who don't recognize Christ as a significant figure or as a divine figure or anything? So in Hinduism, for instance, are we going to base the origins of Hinduism on the birth of a prophet that they don't have any connection to? No. So what happened with historians was they said, well, we can't rewrite the entire calendar. Logically, it's still based on the birth of Christ, the year zero being the birth of Christ. But so we can't rewrite and like erase everything, unless you're the Pope, Gregory the 13th, who made the Gregorian calendar. But anyway, we can't rewrite the whole calendar, so let's just change the letters. So BCE means before Common Era. CE means Common Era. So it's still the same thing as BC, AD, but we just call it BCE and CE so that the people who aren't Christian, who don't recognize the birth of Christ as being a significant moment in history, have a timeline to follow as well. That's a whole lot said over BCE and CE. So I'm going to jump into this. What does the symbol of Hinduism mean? It's Om. You might be familiar with the sound. Sometimes people, Om when they meditate, which I don't mean to make light. That's generally what people associate with meditation. Hinduism is the Om sound. Well, that's what the symbol is, and it comes from the letters A and U and then M, the Om, those three things. It's a sacred symbol. It's an important thing to represent the faith, and so that's how we can recognize Hinduism. Where did it start? It started in the Indus River Valley. So there's a couple of river valleys that were really significant in world history. The Indus River Valley is one of them. Civilizations began, the first human civilizations began along river valleys. So the Tigris and Euphrates in the Middle East, the Indus River Valley, the Yangtze River in China. Water is life, basically, because you got to irrigate your crops. You got to be able to have plants, food to feed a society, which, interestingly, water is life. Think about how much water and water symbolism factors into every major world religion. Baptism for Christianity, the River Ganges for Hindus, washing yourself, hands, feet, face before prayer for Muslims. Water is very significant because that's where civilization began. So the Hindus are the earliest ones, the earliest religion, but it's going to be kind of tough to call it a formal religion because, as we'll see, it doesn't have a single founder. It doesn't have a single location. It's a little different. So early on, there was these people called the Dravidians who were farmers in that region. And then they had their regular beliefs. I mentioned in the Origins of Religion video that natural spirits are generally what people would pay attention to for religion, wanting to make sure the gods and goddesses are happy, to keep the crops, basically to keep the crops growing and to have peace in the land. So then you have these people called the Aryans who invaded the region. They were pastoral nomads. Pastoral meaning they shepherd, and nomads meaning they don't have a homeland where they live. They just move everywhere. And they came in from Central Asia. They invaded the region and conquered it. And the Dravidians had their beliefs. The Aryans had their beliefs. And this is some of that diffusion and transmission of culture type thing. It mixed, and it these collections of beliefs, there were some writings that were there, became what we start to recognize as Hinduism. So there was some Dravidian beliefs like the transmigration of souls, which is where when we die, our soul is reborn. Some of y'all might know that as reincarnation. And the Aryans introduced the written language called Sanskrit, which is where some of the beliefs in the holy books get written down in a language. So that's Sanskrit. I'll pop a link to this video up there. It's called Let's Look at World Religions. If I can, it might be a proprietary video I can't share. Some of the big events, though, in Hinduism, because we don't have a single founding date where we say in this year with this person. Around a 1500-year period where the Dravidians were at their peak, and then the Aryans move in, and they're the ones that kind of take over. And you can see the map here that shows the Aryans were up in this area, and they invaded, moved down this way. The Indus River Valley comes down this way. This is where it all starts kind of mixing and whatever. So what are these beliefs that start mixing? What were the ones that were there? What did the Aryans bring? How do we see this as Hinduism? Well, the first big belief is Brahman is, I'm going to move my face over here, is Brahman is the absolute universal existence, which for Hindus, if we were to put a term that most people would understand on it, we would call it God. Brahman is the absolute universal ultimate reality, ultimate soul. It is one God represented or manifested many, many ways, something like 330 million different representations. So there's different aspects, and the way I like to explain this is the person talking to you right now is John Benke, and you recognize me. Some of you I went to high school with, some of you are my friends now, some of you are my family, some of you are just people that I've met through work. So each one of you sees a different version of me. My students see Mr. Benke. My parents see son. My wife sees husband. My son sees dad. Like all of these different manifestations of me, but I'm still just me. I'm one person, but I mean something different to everybody I come into contact with. That's the Hindu idea about God. They're not actually polytheistic. People think they're polytheistic because of Vishnu, Shiva, Ganesh, and all that stuff, except those are just different representations, or let's just call it different hats that Brahman wears at the moment that that need arises. So whatever it is that is represented is one aspect of Brahman, the ultimate existence, the ultimate reality. So they have a belief called Dharma, which is basically the duties. You have a duty on earth that you should be living to do your best. And if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, kind of like if you're violating the 5 pillars or the 10 commandments or the Beatitudes, whatever, those are the way we're supposed to behave in different religious faiths. Well, Dharma is the way we're supposed to behave. And if you don't do that, you're going to have bad karma. Karma is all of your actions that kind of get put into a spiritual bank account. And when you die, if you have a positive balance on your bank account, you get reincarnated in a better situation. If you don't really have a good bank account, maybe you just stay where you are. Maybe you did a lot of bad things. You didn't do what you were supposed to do for what Dharma requires of you. You're reborn perhaps lower. And this is something that we'll get into, especially with the social structure and the setting of society. So Dharma is the way of life. If you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, your karma is affected. If you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, your karma is good. So some of the beliefs, I've already mentioned it before. Reincarnation is the transmigration of souls. After you die, your soul is reborn into another life. If you have good karma, you go up in life. If your karma is bad, you stay the same or go down. Samsara is that whole cycle. You're born, you live your life. Dharma, you're trying to follow, you have karma. When you die, you get reborn again. And moksha is when you finally are free of that. That it can happen infinite number of times until you as an individual soul have learned and reached unity with Brahma, that you have finally reached that plateau. Some people might call it nirvana. So the texts that they use are called the Vedas. These are the oldest texts. They weren't actually written down until the late 1700s, which is a problem because that's thousands of years of people saying and putting their spin on it, and whoever translates it is putting their own spin on it. So, but it is important to know that the Vedas are the oldest of the Hindu scriptures, and it's divided into 4 savitas, as far as I know. That's the pronunciation, but I could be wrong. I probably am. And those divisions are the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. It's broken into the different roles, kind of like you have the Old Testament and the New Testament, or the Torah. You've got different breaking down of the text. So it's the knowledge, the chants, the rituals, and the incarnations of things. So where is sacred? Well, as I mentioned already, water is sacred, and the Ganges River is a sacred place in Hinduism. People go there to bathe, they go there to bury the dead. It's a very interesting thing, and I will put a video up there about what the Ganges means to India. Worship is in temples, but also families have their own shrines that have a particular part of the home that is dedicated to a shrine for that particular family's deity, the deity, god or goddess that that family has chosen as meaningful and important for their life. So you'll see a shrine, and there's certain rituals that they follow, which I'll talk a little bit about in a second. Some really cool stuff. Diwali, like San Antonio, we have a Diwali festival. It's a festival of lights. It's really cool with I mean, you can see in the picture there, and you can look up videos. You can find some really cool things with the candles, and it's just a really cool the festival of lights. It's a celebration of victory of good over evil. And then Holi is another cool one that I'd love to experience sometime. And this is the festival of colors. That's where you see people throwing the colored dust on each other, and that's just a celebration of the coming of spring. There's two videos that I will link to, Diwali and Holi both. And some of the rituals, I mentioned the shrine. So this is a shrine that a person might have in their home, and you offer puja, which is offerings of food from a sacred source, however that may be. Maybe it's a blessed land, or it's like water from the Ganges River. You leave fresh flowers on the different holidays. You decorate it and dress it and whatever. You make sacrifices of offerings, not like animal or human sacrifices, but you make sacrifices to the god or the goddess as a way of showing honor to that particular deity. So Hinduism is really cool. Whenever I think of Hinduism and my own understanding of it, the word that comes to mind is color. Hinduism is a very vibrant, lively thing because it's like the tapestry of humanity. Every Hindu has a different way of thinking and believing and acting in Hinduism than another one. It's a very individualized, personalized religious faith. And then, of course, with festivals like Holi, and the artwork is just really vibrant and colorful and really neat. It's just a very interesting faith to me. And it's also misunderstood because they're not polytheistic. They don't believe in 330 million different gods. They do believe in the one ultimate existence. So it's a colorful faith to me, and it's a misunderstood faith to me. And it's something that I have enjoyed learning about. Something you might enjoy learning more about is this guy here named Zach Anner. He has a series called Have a Little Faith, and I'm going to put a link to his video series in there too. He goes around and talks to different people who practice different religious faiths. And this is a really entertaining video. He does way better than I could at a lot of it. And this is something my students have quite enjoyed. And if while you're home here in quarantine, you might try to look at his Workout Wednesday series, which I'll probably share online. He's a really funny guy, and he's got a really great motivating presence online, and he shares the opportunity for people to learn about other religious faiths. So that's Hinduism for now. The next up is going to be Buddhism. Until then, namaste.